Welcome, friends, to Crime and Punishment, a legal podcast. The official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida, the website for which is augustusinvictus.com. That is me, yours truly, the host of this program. I've remembered the viral style link. I'm going to post it in there. Afternoon, Brian. Afternoon, Tampa Vikings. How's it going? So we're going to have a short program today, because I have to be out the door at 4. And just had a lot going on this week. Also a lot of news this week. Where to begin? I guess begin by saying go to Emperor Invictus on Twitter. That's where I post all this gold that we talk about on the program. I call this episode Trump and the Trannies. I guess unconsciously I'm just trying to get kicked off of YouTube. Let's see what we got here. Let's start with my favorite. Hopefully it's yours. Just a good old-fashioned American story of somebody getting their comeuppance. Not as much as you'd like, but you know, at least it's a start, right? Let me get out of this viral style thing. So now it's having trouble loading, of course, now that we're streaming. Harry Dunn, this is NBC News. Harry Dunn, former police officer who defended Capitol on January 6th, defeated in Maryland House primary. So we've got two stories coming out of Maryland. This is a positive one. I'll just brace you. The next one's not a positive one, but this one, State Senator Sarah Elfreth, who is backed by a powerful pro-Israel group, won the primary in the heavily Democratic 3rd District. So Harry Dunn in this picture, you know what? I'm going to send the link into the chat because this picture it's worth 1,000 words. Check this out. He's wearing a shirt. He's got his chains on, but he's got this shirt that says insurrection, like it's a dictionary definition. 1. A violent uprising against an authority or government. 2. January 6, 2021. And then this guy, I mean, this is Harry Dunn in this photograph. And he is wearing a shirt that is quoting himself. It says, instead of accepting the results of the 2020 election, many attempted to change the results through an insurrection on 1/6/21. And then it quotes himself, Harry Dunn, on his shirt. Like, who wears a shirt quoting yourself on the front, putting your own name? Like, that's just weird. I could see if you're in marketing or you're running a campaign and you've got Dunn for Congress or whatever, like that makes sense, but putting your own quote on your shirt, that's just, I mean, I'm glad he lost on so many levels. Maryland State Senator Sarah Elfreth won the Democratic primary for an open house seat Tuesday, NBC News projects, defeating a former police officer who defended the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and a slew of other candidates. Elfreth will be a heavy favorite in the general election to succeed retiring Representative John Sarbanes in Maryland's 3rd District, which is solidly Democratic. Harry Dunn, a 15-year veteran of the Capitol Police Force, became one of the public faces of the officers who battled rioters seeking to keep President Donald Trump in power after he lost the 2020 election. He became a fixture on the cable news circuit, testified at a televised House January 6 committee hearing, and wrote a book about his life, Standing My Ground. What an inspiration this guy is. Dunn, a political newcomer, used his national platform to significantly outraise more than 20 other candidates, including Elfreth and 4 other state lawmakers. So he out-fundraised everybody, had more money than everybody, still lost. But the dynamics of the race shifted in the final weeks of the campaign as outside money poured in. And here is NBC News' angle. United Democracy Project, or UDP, a super PAC tied to the powerful pro-Israel American Israel Public Affairs Committee, that's AIPAC, spent more than $4 million to boost Elfreth. The bulk of that money was spent on TV ads in the Baltimore market. Dunn aggressively pushed back against the outside spending. Quote, you look at the people that are funding UDP. There are a lot of big prominent MAGA donors, especially to Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Lauren Boebert, and several others, and those are just the facts, end quote, Dunn said in an interview before Election Day. Quote, I've been very outspoken about how I feel against the MAGA faction of the Republican Party, including their leader, and I don't have any regrets, end quote. So he's saying that because AIPAC is funding Elfreth, that this is actually MAGA dipping its demonic hand into his race and keeping him out of the government. Elfreth said that by law she cannot coordinate with any super PAC and that she had no idea why UDP is backing her, arguing that her rivals' positions on Israel are very similar to her own. She campaigned on her legislative record in Annapolis, pointing to the fact that many of her bills, including those on solar energy and Chesapeake Bay restoration, have been signed into law. She also spoke to voters about protecting women's reproductive rights and combating climate change, including major flooding that has hit parts of the district. Quote, we've had tornadoes in this district. We've had gun violence. We've had flooding. We've had a whole bunch of issues that I've been able to be there for folks on their hardest days, end quote, Elfreth said in an interview before Election Day. Quote, and that's a really important part of the job, that at the end of the day, folks really don't care how I vote, as long as they feel like they can turn to me when they need help, end quote. So what an interesting article. AIPAC, for whatever reason, decided they didn't want this guy, Harry Dunn. Good riddance. You've served your purpose. You were their face when they needed you. You were a traitor when you were called upon. And now you can go screw off and die in anonymity by yourself. I guess they're done using you, buddy. So walk on home. Good riddance. Let's talk about the not-so-positive case out of Maryland. Let me check in over here. Afternoon, Spud Ruckus. How's he hanging? So this is from Fox News, other side of the fence. Parents can't opt kindergarten to 5th grade children out of LGBTQ curriculum. Appeals court. So parents can't opt kindergarten through 5th grade children out of that curriculum, says the appeals court. But sometimes these headlines get a little wordy. The court ruled that parents had not shown how the policy would violate their children's First Amendment right to free exercise of religion. So, a lot of protests, everybody's up in arms, and it's not the cool protests like, Marilyn Manson or something. These people are trying to teach kids gay sex. This seems like a no-brainer. That you'd, at the very least, be allowed to opt your kids out of it. But no, that's the program, right? That's why the public schools exist. It's not to teach them to read and write, it's to indoctrinate them. My older kids were in elementary school, a long time ago. And it was bad enough then. And we had Common Core in Florida back in those dark days. And, we went to open house and the teacher would tell us, I've got to teach what the government tells me to teach, but, I'll teach them real history too, and I'll just watch the door and make sure nobody's coming in. And it was very subversive to teach history, to teach things that were outside of that curriculum. It was really oppressive. And that was, over a decade ago, certainly. It's a long time ago. Can't imagine having kids in public schools now. What are you guys thinking? Who has their kids in public schools right now? I understand it's difficult to do homeschooling. I pulled it off, but it was very difficult, and that was only for like a year with one kid. For me, it was very tough, super tough. But there are private schools. And their voucher program, I don't know. Maybe they don't have that outside of Florida. That sucks wherever you are. But I'll tell you what really sucks is your kids getting brainwashed into LGBTQ propaganda. You guys got to get your kids out of public schools at this point. This is, borderline child abuse, sending your kids to public schools anymore. Maryland's largest school district does not have to allow parents to opt their K-5 children out of classes and books that discuss LGBTQ topics like sexuality and gender, at least for now, a federal appeals court ruled on Wednesday. The 2-1 ruling by the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed a lower court decision denying a preliminary injunction on the basis that the parents had not shown how the policy, initiated by the Montgomery County Public Schools Board, would violate their children's First Amendment right to free exercise of religion. The parents had argued that refusal to provide an opt-out from their children's exposure to LGBT-themed books and related discussions violates federal and state law. Some of the book titles include The Pride Puppy, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, and Born Ready, the true story of a boy named Penelope. The parents argued that the books contradict their religious duty to train their children in accordance with their faith on, quote, what it means to be male and female, the institution of marriage, human sexuality, and related themes, end quote. The litigants, 3 sets of parents who are Muslim, Jewish, and Christian, along with a parental rights organization, argue that the responsibility for what their children learn should fall to them instead of the schools. Well, it's a tough argument to make when you're sending your kids to public schools, especially when we place the state and federal governments so in charge of what our kids learn. We just delegate that responsibility. We treat school as a daycare and just drop them off. It's their problem to educate the kids. However, the court ruled that the mere exposure to ideas contrary to one's faith is not enough of a burden to implicate the First Amendment, and that exposure to issues that one disagrees with, even for religious reasons, is, quote, part of the compromise parents make when choosing to send their children to public schools, end quote, the ruling states. You could say the same about racial issues. Like gang violence and all these horrible things that happen in integrated schools, that's just part of the compromise you make. And you are attending a school that is funded by tax dollars. Quote, we take no view on whether the parents will be able to present evidence sufficient to support any of their various theories once they have had the opportunity to develop a record as to the circumstances surrounding the board's decision and how the challenged texts are actually being used in schools, end quote. U.S. Circuit Judge G. Stephen Agee, a President George W. Bush appointee, wrote for the majority in the opinion. Quote, at this early stage, however, given the parents' broad claims, the very high burden required to obtain a preliminary injunction, and the scant record before us, we are constrained to affirm the district court's order denying a preliminary injunction, end quote. U.S. Circuit Judge A. Marvin Quattlebaum, Jr., who was appointed by former President Trump, dissented, writing that he disagreed with the district court motion finding the parents failed to establish that the board burdened their First Amendment rights. Quote, the parents have shown the board's decision to deny religious opt-outs burdened these parents' right to exercise their religion and direct the religious upbringing of their children by putting them to the choice of either compromising their religious beliefs or foregoing a public education for their children, end quote, Quattlebaum wrote. Quote, I also find that the board's actions, at least under this record, were neither neutral nor generally applicable. Finally, I find the parents have established the other requirements for a preliminary injunction. So, I would reverse the district court and enjoin the Montgomery County School Board of Education from denying religious opt-outs for instruction to K-5 children involving the texts, end quote. Eric Baxter, a senior counsel and vice president at the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, which is representing the parents, tells Fox 5 DC that the group is disappointed with the decision and says the themes are inappropriate for students. Quote, they involve issues around sexuality that are simply too mature for such young children, end quote, Baxter said. Baxter tells The Hill they plan to appeal the ruling. Quote, the court just told thousands of Maryland parents that they have no say in what their children are taught in public schools, Baxter tells the publication. That runs contrary to the First Amendment, Maryland law, the school board's own policies, and basic human decency, end quote. So, backing up a little, you'll notice that this is a 2-1 decision. For those unfamiliar with this whole process, let's start at the beginning. So these people went to the district court. This is federal. The district court is the trial court. So they went to the trial court and they asked for a preliminary injunction, which means they're asking the court to basically stop this from happening while the case is pending. So under normal circumstances, you'd file your case, You go through discovery, you go through all the motions, you go through all this stuff, and then at the end you have a trial, and then the court decides what to do. What they ask the court to do is file a preliminary injunction saying, look, while this case is pending, stop these people from teaching our kids gay stuff. And the district court said, no, you have not shown that this is proper. And the appellate court then, so they appeal it, that denial of their preliminary injunction, they appeal it. The appellate court, which is the Fourth Circuit, they say, no, we think the district court is right. You guys didn't show us that this was proper. You didn't show that these opt-outs were necessary or anything of the sort. This is not a violation of your First Amendment rights, at least according to your petition for injunction, so we're going to affirm the trial court's decision to deny that. On the trial level at the district court, there's one judge. You're going to that judge, you're saying, we need this preliminary injunction. Judge says no. You say, okay, well, we're going to appeal that. You go to the appellate court. At the appellate court here, the Fourth Circuit, they have 3 judges. That's the appellate panel. 2 of those judges agreed with the district court. So they said, no, you didn't show us that this was a violation of your First Amendment rights that requires a preliminary injunction. We're denying that. We're affirming what the trial court did. One judge disagreed and said, no, they definitely did meet the standard for preliminary injunction. They should ban the gay stuff right now, pending the outcome of this case. You guys are wrong. Now, when you first hear that a 2-1 decision has been made, and they're affirming the trial court's decision, you would assume in this, liberal haven they have up there, that all of these judges are necessarily liberals. And what this Fox News piece is telling you is that that is actually not the case. The judge who wrote the opinion is a George W. Bush appointee. I know they are liberals, but they are technically conservatives, right? They're Republicans. I mean, you would think that these are Obama appointees making a ruling like this, but they're not. The one dissenting judge is the Trump guy, Quattlebaum. Then the next part is about this organization that's basically a think tank. What was their name again? The Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty. They're the ones representing the parents. So sometimes these think tanks or NGOs, or like the ACLU, for instance, right? The ACLU will represent clients. So Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty will represent clients. Just like the St. Thomas More Society will represent these pro-life advocates, right? So they are the ones representing the parents. And they are the ones planning to appeal the decision that was just made. And they're saying this obviously goes against the First Amendment, Maryland law, the school board's own policies, and basic human decency. And how can you disagree with that? Unless you're in the LGBTQ community and you don't care about those things. MCPS, which is the wealthiest district in Maryland, announced in 2022 efforts to include an LGBTQ inclusive reading list as part of its English language arts curriculum. The decision sparked several rallies, pushing for the school district to put the opt-out policy back in place. Bethany Mandel, a mother and contributing writer for Deseret News, told Fox and Friends First last year that she believed it's a parent's right to tackle controversial topics, including sexuality and gender ideology, with their children on their own terms. Quote, some of the books were first, second, third grade read-aloud books about transgender ideology, about sexuality, Mandel told Carly Shimkus. Some of the parents who spoke in favor of banning the opt-out said, quote, I'm gay, and a book didn't make me gay, and there's no way that your child, if you shield them in this manner, can sort of operate in the outside world, end quote. And that's not what anyone is asserting. No one thinks that our kids can turn gay by reading a book. What we're asserting is that children are best learning about these sort of tricky, sticky subjects from their parents, and their parents should have a right to determine how their kids are first introduced to this, she continued. And that is the end of the article. So, feel bad for you guys living in Maryland. That's terrible. I'd say move to Florida, but we're full here. Sorry, buddy. So, those are two stories out of Maryland. One, good. Dunn lost the race. The other, pretty bad. That's as bad as it gets, I'd say. That your kids are having gay stuff crammed down their throats in school. Catching up at 2 times speed in Idaho, says Spud Ruckus, you have to opt your child into sex ed. Next door in Washington, you cannot opt them out. Disgusting. Yep. Sounds about right. Florida Treasure, hello from Orlando, right back at you. Let's see what other kind of news we've got today. Trump blasts his trial judges. Then his fans call for violence. So Reuters made a special report on, MAGA folks being violent against judges. I've got that. It's really long, though. And we've got some other stuff. So we might come back to that. There was another Trump. Oh, here's one. So I got 2 different Trump things other than that. Trump aide John McEntee leaks effort to ban pornography within the first 180 days of second Trump term. I think that alone would cause these people to assassinate him. Can you imagine a federal ban on pornography? Because obviously there is a way to do that. Obviously it enters into interstate commerce, whether it's on the internet or it's being shipped in DVD form, or people are traveling from one state to another. The feds make up whatever they want to make something interstate commerce. Congress absolutely could ban pornography countrywide. And of course they don't. It's a major industry at this point. So what a thing to leak. That's from AF Post on Twitter. So it's just at AF Post. Just a little clip, not really an article. And there's another one with Trump. Where did that go? Oh, there we go. Well, okay. Trump's doubts about election results spread among GOP and raised concern for the next January 6th. So the media all across the board is in full-on panic mode. How do we stop this thing in November? And if we can't stop the election, if we can't get Trump imprisoned, if we can't get him kicked off the ballots, if we can't, because obviously Biden's not going to win in a free and fair election, if we can't even rig the election, because Trump just seems unstoppable at this point, if we can't have a worldwide plague or have BLM or pro-Palestine groups or whoever burn down the country this time, like if none of those tricks work and he actually wins this election in November, what are we going to do to stop him from taking power on January 6th? What are we going to do from that to prevent that transfer of power? That's not going to make us all look like total hypocrites because we said Trump incited an insurrection for doing exactly what we're talking about doing. So 6 months before the 2024 presidential election, the House Speaker and several Republican lawmakers angling to be Donald Trump's running mate are being increasingly vocal that they cannot guarantee they will certify the results for who won the White House. It's a growing list that includes a who's who of the Trump-dominated GOP, including Senators J.D. Vance of Ohio and Tim Scott of South Carolina, and Representatives Mike Johnson of Louisiana, Elise Stefanik of New York, and Byron Donalds of Florida. Wow, that's like 6 people. This is spreading like wildfire. They're taking positions that in previous presidential contests wouldn't have meant much, given the every 4 years meeting in Congress that's required under the Constitution to take place on January 6th is widely known to be a ceremonial affair where there's no real doubt over who's going to be the next executive leader of the U.S. government. But then came the deadly 2021 insurrection, which both federal and state criminal indictments say Trump was instrumental in orchestrating as a way to try to overturn the results of a close presidential race that he lost to Joe Biden. What I love about this article is that it's posing as a news article, not an opinion piece. It doesn't say opinion up at the top. It says elections, like this is news. Totally unbiased. But then came the deadly 2021 insurrection. I'm sorry, who died? Except the woman shot by the Capitol Police? Right? And they can't say that Trump was instrumental in orchestrating the insurrection because, man, that might be defamatory. That's a pretty definite statement by a news organization. So they say the federal and state criminal indictments say that Trump was instrumental in orchestrating that. Yes, which they have been pushing for the past couple years, trying to get him imprisoned so that he couldn't run for president and win a third time. And overturn the results of a close presidential race that he lost to Joe Biden. Got to put that in there. That's fact. And it's fact because if you say it enough, you can make it true. Especially when no one can contest you. With the same two candidates primed for a 2024 rematch, historians, political experts, Democrats, and even some Republicans who left office because of Trump are raising alarm about what this expanding circle of potential election denialism means for the future of self-government in America. Again, keep in mind, this is allegedly a news article, not an opinion piece. This is how overboard all these people are. The expanding circle of potential election denialism, what that means for the future of self-government in America. Quote, it's extremely corrosive to democracy, regardless of whether people saying it really mean it or are following Trump's lead, said Michael Miller, a George Washington University political science professor who studies how democracies end. Historically, he added that democracies have collapsed when elected leaders convince citizens they cannot trust elections. You would think that a guy like that, a political science professor who studies how democracies end, like that's your area of research. You know more about this than anyone. And you have no idea that democracies collapse when you, open the borders, or you depose the gods of the state, or you bring in foreigners into your Senate, whatever governing body you have there, or everything becomes corrupt. You're saying that democracies end when elected leaders convince citizens they cannot trust elections. What about the preliminary phase of that where the system has become so corrupt that you actually cannot trust elections? You've missed that essential step in the analysis. Which leads you to believe that maybe this political science professor who studies how democracies end might not have any idea what he's talking about, or if he does, he's absolutely dishonest. He says, quote, you're basically telling them there's no point competing within the system. This is the origin of J6, that the system failed you, end quote. So let's leave aside the fact that the elections are corrupt and that people don't have a choice and that even if you vote, you're going to get screwed out of your vote. Leave all that aside. Let's just assume all those people are crazy. If you say that out loud, you're really the one destroying the entire system. The elections would work fine if it weren't for you pointing out the corruption therein. That's really his position. That's the kind of 1984 doublespeak that we are dealing with at every level of society. Academicians, the media, the politicians, the heads of corporations, the teachers, your local baristas, everybody's parroting this same thing. It's not the corruption that's the problem. It's you talking about how things are corrupt. That's the problem. You traitor. Next section is titled Trump's Familiar Refrain. It's still anyone's guess who will win the White House this November. Recent national and battleground state polls show a tight race, though Trump currently carries a lead in several of the critical states needed to win the number of electoral college votes to become president. This reminds me of 2016 when everybody called it for Clinton. Like, this is over. It is so in the bag. Trump lost, and then they were all just devastated when Trump won. It won bigly. Running in 2024 to become the second former U.S. president to serve non-consecutive terms, Trump is already working to sow doubts about an outcome that remains months away. Quote, "If everything's honest, I'll gladly accept the results," Trump told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel earlier this month in an interview. "If it's not, you have to fight for the right of the country," end quote. How dare he say that? Again, the problem is not the corruptions. The problem is not the dishonesty. The problem is that this guy has the chutzpah to travel the country talking to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and God knows who else, telling them that if everything's honest, if we have a free and fair and clean election, then of course I'll accept the results. But if it's dishonest and you people rigged the election, well, I'm not so sure I'm going to accept that. How dare he say that? I mean, he's inciting an insurrection right now, saying that to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Everybody in Milwaukee is corrupted by this guy. He's destroying everybody's faith in democracy by saying these things. Trump's stance is not very different than what he said before the 2016 election that he won and the 2020 campaign that he lost. But what is new is the degree to which he's being echoed by so many senior Republicans who are primed to be in powerful positions of authority when the 2024 results get certified. During a press conference last week, Johnson, the House Speaker, refused to say whether he'd accepted the 2020 election result or would accept the 2024 result. Johnson, a longtime Trump supporter who on Tuesday attended the former president's ongoing criminal trial in New York, could be chosen Speaker again if Republicans maintain control of the House. That's a position that would place him up on the podium during the January 6, 2025 meeting to certify the election results in the House. Trump's evasiveness about the 2024 election outcome is also being mirrored publicly by at least 4 of his potential vice presidential picks who currently serve in Congress. This group has... Oh, and he picked somebody today. At least he said he was going to. Let's see if that's out yet. We'll do it live. Trump vice president pick. Let's see what he's got here. Maybe he's announced it by now. Nope, not out yet. Sorry, guys. Can't wait to see, though. But he said this morning he's decided who it's going to be. So we're all just waiting with bated breath. Scott, the 4th-term South Carolina senator, repeatedly refused to commit to accepting the outcome of the 2024 election in a May 5th interview with Kristen Welker, the moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. Vance, a freshman senator from Ohio, also hedged Sunday on State of the Union. Quote, "If it's a free and fair election, I think every Republican will enthusiastically accept the results. Again, I think those results will show that Donald Trump has been elected president," he said. When pressed, he added, "If it is a free and fair election, I will accept the results whoever wins," end quote. How dare they say that? Of course it's going to be a free and fair election, you evil MAGA Republicans. You are destroying faith in democracy by implying it could be anything other than that. Stefanik, a 5th-term lawmaker from upstate New York who serves in the House GOP leadership as its conference chairwoman, said in January that she would, quote, "see if this is a legal and valid election," end quote, before committing to voting to certify the 2024 election result. Donalds, a 2nd-term congressman who represents a Southwest Florida district, seemed to echo Stefanik in March when he wouldn't commit to certifying election results in 2028, should he be picked as Trump's vice president and they win in 2024. Quote, "If you have state officials who are violating the election law in their states, then no, I would not," he said. That would be such an amazing campaign, president and vice president, Donald and Donalds. That would just, what a ticket, right? So USA Today, that's where this article is, their qualm here is that, well, yeah, Trump's always crazy. He's always saying these nutso things. The problem is that all these other people are saying the same thing now. They can't be serious, right? No one's actually taking what Trump says seriously, are they? Are they just taking his lead and just trying to curry favor with the people that are the voters, these barbarians, these unread, unwashed peasants who don't know what's good for them? They're just pandering to the mob. But they're high-level officials. One's a Congress chairwoman, one's a representative. Two of them are representatives. Senators. Man, this is bad. All these legitimate people are saying, this isn't just crazy Trump anymore. All these high-ranking people are saying, there is corruption in our elections. And if you guys do it again in 2024, what you did in 2020, we're not going to certify that election. So don't even think about it. That's a problem. Not that I'm saying that, of course. We're on YouTube, and I would never deny the results of the 2020 election. I'm just saying that's their position. And USA Today's position is, those guys are all crazy. What do we do to stop this, right? Of course, I love Big Brother. Everybody here loves Big Brother. Please don't kick us off YouTube. The next section says, January 6, 2021 looms over 2025 ceremony. The fact there is a growing number of top-tier Republicans suggesting without evidence that a Trump loss in November wouldn't be on the up and up could have practical implications. Again, this is allegedly a news article, not an opinion piece. The Congress that meets on January 6, 2025 to certify the election results could look very different than the chamber did at the start of 2021. When an organized group of lawmakers planned to challenge the results of multiple states, but lost support following several hours of delay due to the Capitol riot and failed to change the ultimate outcome when the final vote was held in the early morning hours on January 7, 2021. In her ceremonial role presiding over the results next January, Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic incumbent running for a second term, will stand before a greater share of Republicans compared to 2021 who have embraced Trump's claims about stolen elections. Yeah, because you've got to remember, back in 2021, there were 3 people who said, yeah, Trump's probably right. I'm not going to vote to certify this. Maybe 3 people had the balls to say that. And now it's kind of spreading like a disease. After the 2020 election, elected leaders defended Trump's right to challenge election results in court, where the lame duck president and his campaign lost over 60 lawsuits. No corruption, though. It's just, what a crazy idea. In fact, we should disbar all the attorneys who dared question the election. The judges are never biased, by the way. They just have an inherent faith in the system, and anybody who questions that, obviously they're filing frivolous things and making crazy claims. They should all be disbarred. And that's what they've been trying to do. Either disbar or jail all those attorneys who are on Trump's team. We've actually got another article about that, but we're not going to get to it because it's already 15:54. Now, those same Republicans largely dismissed his claims that rampant fraud cost him the election. Before and after the 2020 election, Republican leaders stressed that American elections are secure. Well, thank goodness they stressed that. In 2024, those leaders either have already changed or will have stepped down by the time the newly elected Congress meets next January to certify the presidential election outcome. At the same time, many of the GOP members voicing doubts, now publicly or privately, will remain in a position to challenge Electoral College results from key states. Johnson's position in particular rankles Democrats. The Louisiana lawmaker was a rank-and-file member in 2020 when he lobbied nearly half of his Republican House colleagues to sign on to a friend of the court brief, that's an amicus brief, in support of throwing out the election results of 4 states Biden won. Johnson also urged Republicans not to certify the election results on January 6, 2021. How interesting. So when you have a case and you're not a party, like it's, I don't know, let's say Roe v. Wade, right? You got Roe v. Wade. You're not Roe and you're not Wade. You're not this woman and you're not a government official. You technically have nothing to do with the case, right? You can't get involved. What you can do is write an amicus brief to the court and say, look, here's the law. This is how our organization believes you should rule on this issue. So Johnson did that and had half of the Republican House colleagues of his sign on to that amicus brief in support of throwing out the election results in 4 of the states that Biden allegedly won. So this is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger problem, that this crazy claim about election denial is becoming, if not mainstream, certainly more widely accepted by some powerful people. So we're going to have to end there. Afternoon show ahead. How's it going? So we are going to have to get out of here. Gotta go. Sorry, guys. Short program today, but we'll be back next week. Till then, everybody.